knocked loudly at the saucepan lid to be let out and peeled.
What has ever got your precious father then?
Said Mrs. Cratchit.
And your brother, Tiny Tim? And Martha Wanter's late last... I can't read this. And Martha Wanter's late last Christmas Day by half an hour.
Yes, Martha, mother,
said a girl, appearing as she spoke.
Just manifesting.
Everyone together here. Here's
Martha,
mother!
mother.
Cried the two or possibly more young Cratchits.
Hurrah! There's such a goose, Martha!
Why, bless your heart alive, my dear. How late you are,
said Miss Cratchit, kissing her a dozen times and taking off her shawl and bonnet for her.
We had a deal of work to finish up last night,
replied the girl,
and had to clear away this morning, mother. Mother?
Well, never mind so long as you are come,
said Mrs. Cratchit.
Sit you down before the fire, my dear, and have a warm Lord bless ye.
No, there's father coming.
Cried an unclear number of young Cratchits.
Are you two okay?
Hide, Martha! Hide!
God, these children sound like
Times are really tough, aren't they?
They're everywhere at once.
Family is in puberty at the same time.
Yeah.
So Martha hid herself, and in came little Bob, the father, with at least 3 feet of comforter, exclusive of the fringe, hanging down before him, and his threadbare clothes donned up and brushed to look seasonable, and Tiny Tim was upon his shoulder. Alas, for Tiny Tim, he bore a little crutch and had his limbs supported by an iron frame. Why, where's Aunt Martha? Cried Bob Cratchit, looking round.
Not coming,
said Mrs. Cratchit. Not coming, said Bob, with a sudden declination in high spirits, for he had been Tim's blood horse all the way from church, and had come home rampant. Not coming upon Christmas Day. Martha didn't like to seem disappointed, if it were only in joke, so she came out prematurely from behind the closet door and ran into his arms, while the 2 or possibly more young Cratchits hustled Tiny Tim and bore him off to the wash house that he might hear the pudding singing in the copper.
And how did little Tim behave?
Asked Mrs. Cratchit when she had rallied Bob on his credulity, and Bob hugged his daughter to his heart's content. As good as gold, said Bob, and better. Somehow he gets thoughtful sitting by himself so much, and he thinks the strangest things you've ever heard. He told me, coming home, that he hoped the people saw him on the church because he was a cripple, and it might be pleasant to them to remember upon Christmas Day who made lame beggars walk and blind men see. Bob's voice was tremulous when he told them this, and he trembled more when he said that Tiny Tim was growing strong and hardy. His active little crutch was heard upon the floor, and back came Tiny Tim before another word was spoken, escorted by his brother and sister to a stool beside the fire. And while Bob, turning up his cuffs as if, poor fellow, they were capable of being made more shabby, compounded some hot mixtures into a jug with gin and lemons and stirred it round and round, put it on the hob to simmer. Master Peter and 2 ubiquitous young Cratchits, or possibly more, went to fetch the goose, with which they soon returned in high procession. Mrs. Cratchit made the gravy, ready beforehand in a little saucepan, hissing hot. Master Peter mashed the potatoes with incredible vigor. Miss Belinda sweetened up the applesauce. Martha dusted the hot plates. Bob took Tiny Tim beside him in a tiny corner at the table. The 2, or possibly more, young Cratchits set chairs for everybody, not forgetting themselves, and mounting guard upon their posts, crammed spoons into their mouths, lest they should shriek for goose before their turn came to be helped. At last, the dishes were set on, and grace was said. It was succeeded by a breathless pause as Mrs. Cratchit, looking slowly along the carving knife, prepared to plunge it into the breast. But when she did, and when the long-expected gush of stuffing issued forth, one murmur of delight arose all around the board, and even Tiny Tim, excited by the 2 or possibly more young Cratchits, beat on the table with the handle of his knife and feebly cried,
Hurrah!
There was never such a goose. Bob said he didn't believe there ever was such a goose cooked. Its tenderness and flavor, size and cheapness were the themes of a universal admiration. Eked out by applesauce and mashed potatoes, it was a sufficient dinner for the whole family. Indeed, as Mrs. Cratchit said with great delight, surveying one small atom of a bone upon the dish, they hadn't ate it all at last. Yet everyone had had enough, and the youngest Cratchits in particular were steeped up in sage and onion to the eyebrows. But now, the plates being changed by Miss Belinda, Mrs. Cratchit left the room alone, too nervous to bear witness, to take the pudding up and bring it in. Suppose it should not be done enough. Suppose it should break in turning out. Suppose somebody should have gone over the wall of the backyard and stolen it while they were merry with the goose, a supposition at which the 2 or possibly more young Cratchits became livid. All sorts of horrors were supposed. Hallo! A great deal of steam. The pudding was out of the copper, a smell like a washing day. That was the cloth, a smell like an eating house and pastry cooks next door to each other, with a laudness next door to that. That was the pudding. In half a minute, Miss Cratchit entered, flushed but smiling proudly, with the pudding, like a speckled cannonball, so hard and firm, blazing in a half of quartern of ignited brandy, and belight with Christmas holly stuck into the top. Oh, a wonderful pudding. Oh, a wonderful
I don't know what that
pudding.
I part is, but yeah, just forget the I part.
A wonderful pudding.
You're my
It's
Actually,
Bob Cratchit.
it's actually aware that you're both narrating and Bob Cratchit. So.
It's like the new memoir, Bob Cratchit.
Oh,
You've
I'm a
never heard
pudding,
of
I think.
Pudding
I'm
the first.
pudding.
The great Pudding the First. Yeah.
A wonderful pudding am I, Bob Cratchit said, and calmly, too, that he regarded it as the greatest success achieved by Mrs. Cratchit since their marriage. Mrs. Cratchit said that now the weight was off her mind. She would confess that she had her doubts about the quantity of flour. Everybody
I had
some-
my doubts about the quantity of flour.
As I said, everybody had something to say about it, but nobody said or thought it was at all a small pudding for a large family. Any Cratchit would have blushed to hint at such a thing. At last, dinner was all done. The cloth was cleared, the hearth swept, and the fire made up. The compound in the jug being tasted and considered perfect, apples and oranges were put upon the table, and a shovel full of chestnuts on the fire. Then all the Cratchit family drew around the hearth in what Bob Cratchit called a circle. This is a circle! And at Bob Cratchit's elbow stood the family display of glass. 2 tumblers, a custard cup without a handle. These held hot stuff from the jug, however, as well as golden goblets would have done, and Bob served it out with beaming looks while the chestnuts on the fire sputtered and crackled noisily. Then Bob proposed, "A Merry Christmas to all, my dears. God bless us," which all the family re-echoed.
A
Merry Christmas to us all, my dears. God bless us.
Us.
God bless us, everyone.
Said Tiny Tim, the last of all. He sat very close to his father's side upon his little stool. Bob held his withered little hand in his, as if he loved the child and wished to keep him by his side, but dreaded that he might be taken from him. Scrooge raised his head speedily on hearing his own name. "Mr. Scrooge," said Bob, "I'll give you, Mr. Scrooge, the founder of the feast."
The founder of the feast, indeed.
Cried Mrs. Cratchit, reddening
I wish I had him here. I'd give him a piece of my mind to feast upon, and I'd hope he'd have a good appetite for it.
My dear, said Bob, the children at Christmas Day,
It should be Christmas Day, I am sure,
said she,
on which one drinks the health of such an odious, stingy, hard, unfeeling man as Mr. Scrooge. You know he is, Robert. Nobody knows it better than you do, poor fellow.
My dear, was Bob's mild answer. Christmas Day.
All drink his health for your sake and the day's,
said Mrs. Cratchit.
not for his. Long life to him. A Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He'll be very merry and very happy, I have no doubt.
The children drank the toast after her. It was the first of their proceedings, which had no heartiness in it.
I taught my children passive aggression.
And they passed it down for generations to come. Tiny Tim drank it last of all, but he didn't care twopence for it. Scrooge was the ogre of the family. The mention of his name cast a dark shadow on the party, which was not dispelled for full 5 minutes. After it had passed away, they were 10 times merrier than before, from the mere relief of Scrooge the baleful being done with. Bob Cratchit told them how he had a situation in his eye for Master Peter, which would bring in, if obtained, full 5 and 6 pence weekly. The two young, or possibly more, Cratchits laughed tremendously at the idea of Peter being a man of business, and Peter himself looked thoughtfully at the fire from between his collars, as if he were deliberating what particular investments he should favor when he came into the receipt of that bewildering income. Martha, who was a poor apprentice at the milliner's, then told them what a kind of work she had to do, and how many hours she worked at a stretch, and how she meant to lie abed tomorrow morning for a good long rest, tomorrow being a holiday she passed at home. Also, how she'd seen a countess and a lord some days before, and how the lord was
much about as tall as Peter.
Oh.
At which Peter pulled up his collar so high that you couldn't have seen his herd if you'd been there. All this time, the chestnuts and the jug went round and round, and by they had a song about a lost child traveling in the snow from Tiny Tim, who had a plaintive little voice and sang it very well indeed. There was nothing of high mark in this. They were not a handsome family. That's to put it nicely. They were not well dressed. Their shoes were far from being waterproof. Their clothes were scanty, and Peter might have known, and very likely did, the inside of a pawnbroker's. But they were happy, grateful, pleased with one another, and contented with the time. And when they faded, and looked happier yet in the bright sprinklings of the spirit's torch at parting, Scrooge had his eye upon them, especially on Tiny Tim, until the last. It was a great surprise to Scrooge as the scene vanished to hear a hearty laugh. It was a much greater surprise to Scrooge to recognize it as his own nephew's, and to find himself in a bright, dry, gleaming room with the spirit smiling by his side and looking at that same nephew. It is a fair, even-handed, noble adjustment of things, that while there's an infection and disease and sorrow, there is nothing in the world so as irresistibly contagious as laughter and good humor. When Scrooge's nephew laughed, Scrooge's niece by marriage laughed as heartily as he, and their assembled friends, being not a bit behindhand, laughed out lustily.
He said that Christmas was a humbug as I live,
cried Scrooge's nephew.
He believed it, too. Don't you agree, my wife, who we didn't cast for this?
More shame for him, Fred,
said Scrooge's uncasted niece indignantly.
Is that quotes?
Yeah, I think that's quotes.
Should be.
Bless those women. They never do any...
No. That's still the narrator.
Oh.
It is?
Like, what women are we
Dang,
talking
tricked all
about?
of
Well, it's
us.
definitely not the niece saying this about herself. It's
Oh,
Yeah,
fair
I
enough.
guess so. Yeah.
Bless me.
Bless those women. They never do anything by halves. They are always in earnest. She was very pretty, exceedingly pretty.
Here
With
we
a
go.
dimpled,
Yep.
surprising looking capital face, a ripe little mouth that seemed made to be kissed. What year was this written? As no doubt it was.
1843.
Right.
Okay.
I encourage myself to read it. That all kinds of good little dots about her chin that melted into one another when she laughed. The sunniest pair of eyes you ever saw in any little creature's head. Altogether, she was what you would have called provoking, but satisfactory too. Oh, perfectly satisfactory,
He's a comical old fellow.
said Scrooge's nephew.
There we go. Just find where the scroll is. That's the truth, and not so pleasant as he might be. However, his offenses carry their own punishment, and I have nothing to say against him. Who suffers by his ill whims? Himself, always. Well, here he takes it into his head to dislike us, and he won't come and dine with us. What's the consequence? He don't lose much of a dinner.
Indeed, I think he loses a very good dinner.
Interrupted Scrooge's niece. Everyone else said the same, and they must be allowed to have been competent judges because they had just had dinner, and with the dessert upon the table were clustered round the fire by lamplight.
Well, I'm very glad to hear it,
said Scrooge's nephew.
because I haven't any great faith in these young housekeepers. What do you say, Topper?
Topper clearly had his eye on one of Scrooge's niece's sisters, for he answered that a bachelor was a wretched outcast who had no right to express an opinion on the subject. Whereat Scrooge's niece's sister, the plump one with the lace tucker, not the one with the roses, blushed. After tea, they had some music, for they were a musical family and knew what they were about when they sung a glee or catch. I can assure you, especially Topper, who could growl away in the bass like a good one, and never swell the large veins in his forehead or get red in the face over it. But they didn't devote the whole evening to music. After a while, they played at forfeits, for it's good to be children sometimes, and never better at Christmas when its mighty founder was a child himself. There was at first a game of blind man's buff, though, and I no more believe Topper was really blinded than I believe he had his eyes in his boots, because the way in which he went after that plump sister in the lace tucker was an outrage on the credulity of human nature. Knocking down the fire irons, tumbling over the chairs, bumping up against the piano, smothering himself against the curtains. Wherever she went, there went he. He always knew where the plump sister was. He wouldn't catch anybody else. If you'd fallen up against him, as some of them did, and stood there, he would have made a feint of endeavoring to seize you, which would have been a reply to affront your understanding, and would instantly have sidled off in the direction of the plump sister.
There's a new game.
Said Scrooge.
1.5 hours, spirit. Only one.
It was a game called Yes and No, where Scrooge's nephew had to think of something, and the rest must find out what. He only answering to their questions yes or no, as the case was. The fire of questioning to which he was exposed elicited from him what he was thinking of an animal, a live animal, rather a disagreeable animal, a savage animal, an animal that growled and grunted sometimes, and talked sometimes, and lived in London, and walked about the streets, and wasn't made of a show, or wasn't led by anybody, and didn't live in a menagerie, and was never killed in a market, and was not a horse, or an ass, or a cow, or a bull, or a tiger, or a dog, or a pig, or a cat, or a bear. At every new question put to him, the nephew burst into a fresh roar of laughter. He was so inexpressibly tickled that he was obliged to get up off the sofa and stamp. At last, the plump sister cried out. The uncast plump sister cried out. No one wants to be the chased around uncast.
No one
I
wants to
found
be
it
the
out.
plump sister.
I know what it is, Fred. I know what it is.
What is it?
Cried Fred.
It's
It's your Uncle Scrooge!
Which it certainly was. Admiration was the sentiment, though some objected that the reply, "Is it a bear?" ought to have been yes. Uncle Scrooge had imperceptibly become so gay and light of heart that he would have drank to the unconscious company in an inaudible speech. But the whole scene passed off, and the breath of the last words spoke by his nephew, and he and the spirit were once again upon their travels. Much they saw, and far they went, and many homes they visited, but always with a happy end. The spirits stood by sick beds, and they were cheerful, on foreign lands, and they were close at home, by struggling men, and they were patient in their greater hope, by poverty, and it was rich. In almshouse, hospital, and in jail, in misery's every refuge, where vain man in his little brief authority had not been made fast the door, and barred the spirit out, he left his blessing, and taught Scrooge his precepts. Suddenly, as they stood together in an open place, the bell struck 12.
Oh,
Oh.
sorry. Oh, I got to do the echo. Hold on. Okay, there we go.
Three, 6, 4, 1, 2.
Ah, I got it without it.
12.
Get on.
Scrooge looked about him for the ghost and saw it no more. As the last stroke ceased to vibrate, he remembered the prediction of old Jacob Marley, and lifting up his eyes, beheld a solemn phantom, draped and hooded, coming like a mist along the ground towards him.
Bring out your dead.
Which sends us to the end game of the Arvocalist performance of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And it is the, not quite the last chapter, but the last of the spirits, entitled The Last of the Spirits.
Aptly named.
Oh, and good work on the narration, Russ. Sorry. Rob's.
Damn it! I literally
Sorry.
just said the first word.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. You should definitely give Russ a round of applause.
Yes, good job, Russ. Thank you. Sorry. Moving on to the next narrator. I apologize.
A round of applause. I must get back into character now. The phantom slowly, gravely, silently approached. When it came near him, Scrooge bent down upon his knee, for in the air through which this spirit moved, it seemed to scatter gloom and mystery. It was shrouded in a deep black garment, which concealed its head, its face, its form, and left nothing of it visible save one outstretched hand. He knew no more, for the spirit neither spoke nor moved.
I am in the presence of the ghost of Christmas yet to come. Ghost of the future. I fear you more than any specter I have seen. And as I know your purpose is to do me good, and as I hope to live to be another man from what I was, I am prepared to bear your company. And do it to the tune of 10 gifted subs. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm going to have to shut off the notifications in a second. Thank you for the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Oh, no,
6,
it's gonna keep
7,
going.
8. No, I'll shut it off. 10.
Okay.
I think it's like 10 or
Suddenly,
11 subs. Thank you,
Suddenly,
Helmus.
Scrooge noticed that 10 gifted subs were given to Richard.
Which I
And the
think
spirit said,
I think that actually might bring us to. I think that's a new record. I believe that's going to bring us over 150 subs for the channel. Thank you so much, Illness. 10 subs. Thank you
Awesome.
so
That's
much,
awesome.
Illness. That's really kind
Totally
of you.
okay that the sounds ruined the mood. That's
Yeah,
okay.
I'm gonna shut off the notifications.
I am honored to have heard that during this very scary moment that I'm currently in.
Seriously. Okay, there we go.
As I
Thank you
gaze
so
upon
much,
this
Illness.
outstretched hand before me.
Shall
I'm
I?
prepared to bear you company and do it with a thankful heart. Will you not speak to me?
It gave him no reply. The hand was pointed straight before them.
Lead on! Lead on! Night is waning fast, and it is precious time to me, I know. Lead on, spirit.
They scarcely seemed to enter the city, or the city rather seemed to spring up about them. But there they were, in the heart of it, on 'change amongst the merchants. The spirits stopped beside one little knot of a businessman. Observing that the hand was pointed to them, Scrooge advanced to listen to their talk.
No,
Said a great fat man with a monstrous chin.
I don't know much about it either way. Only know he's dead.
When did he die?
Inquired another.
Last night, I believe.
Why? What is the matter with him? I thought he'd never die.
God knows.
Said the first with a yawn.
Ugh.
Russ, how about you be the red-faced gentleman?
What has he done with his money?
Asked a red-faced gentleman. Sorry, I don't know where my accent went.
I haven't heard.
Said the man with the large chin.
Company, perhaps. He hasn't left it to me. That's all I know. Bye-bye.
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 Scrooge was at first inclined to be surprised that the spirit should attach importance to conversation apparently so trivial, but feeling assured that it must have some hidden purpose, he set himself to consider what it was likely to be. It could scarcely be supposed to have any bearing on the death of Jacob, his old partner, for that was past, and this ghost's province was the future. He looked about in that very place for his own image, but another man stood in his accustomed corner, and though the clock pointed to his usual time of day for being there, he saw no likeness of himself among the multitudes that poured in through the porch. It gave him little surprise, however, for he had been revolving in his mind a change of life, and he thought and hoped he saw his newborn resolutions carried out in this. They left this busy scene and went into an obscure part of the town, to a low shop where iron, old rags, bottles, bones, and greasy offal were bought. A grey-haired rascal of great age sat smoking his pipe. Scrooge and the Phantom came into the presence of this man, just as a woman with a heavy bundle slunk into the shop. But she had scarcely entered when another woman, similarly laden, came in too, and she was closely followed by a man in faded black. After a short period of blank astonishment, which the old man with the pipe had joined them, they all three burst into a laugh.
Okay, let's the charwoman, who's the first person to speak, let's make that Rem. For the laundress, who's the woman that responds to her, let's make that Russ. And I guess Zach can play Old Joe. Who's kind of the, right, you're just, that kind of thing, sort of voice.
Is Joe the one who says you couldn't have met in a better place?
That's the case. Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Got it.
So the first person to
None
speak
of them have names.
Yeah, I know. The first
Best of
person to
luck,
speak
everyone.
is let the charwoman alone to be alone first.
Mm-hmm.
Let the charwoman alone to be the first.
Cried she who had entered first.
Let the laundress alone to be the second, and let the undertaker's man alone to be the third. Look here, old Joe. Oh, look here, old Joe. Here's a chance. If we haven't all three met, here without meaning it.
You couldn't have met in a better place. You were made free of it long ago, you know. The other two ain't strangers.
Sam Elliott, ladies and gentlemen.
Some people called it a sling blade. I called it a Christmas carol.
Started
I'll
somewhere
have
and
the
now it's
sarsaparilla, please.
yeah, it's slowly become Sam Elliott.
He's the dude for his time and place.
What have you got to sell? What
Half
have you
a
got to
minute's-
sell?
Half a minute's patience, Joe, and you shall see.
What have you got to sell?
I think so. Okay, and I think this next. I actually think. Okay, I'm sorry. That half a minute's patience, I think, is actually Mrs. Dilber, who is the second woman, and then the person who says "What odds? Then what odds?" is the charwoman, which was Rem's part. So the laundress is the one who does the half a minute's patience, and that's Mrs. Dilber apparently.
Half a minute's patience, Joe, and you shall see.
What odds then? What odds, Mrs. Dilber?
said the woman.
Every person has a right to take care of themselves. He always did. Who's the worse for the loss of a few things like these? Not a dead man, I suppose.
Mrs. Dilber, whose manner was remarkable for general propitiation, said,
No, indeed, ma'am.
And who is this?
That's Laundress again. Sorry, Charwoman. That's Rem's part, if you wanted.
If he wanted to keep him after he was dead, a wicked old screw, why wasn't he natural in his lifetime? If he had been, he'd have had somebody look after him when he was struck with death, instead of lying gasping out his last there, alone by himself.
It's the truest word that ever was spoke. It's a judgment on him.
I wish it was a little heavier judgment, and it should have been. You may depend upon it. If I could have laid my hands on anything else, open that bundle, old Joe, and let me know the value of it. Speak out plain. I'm not afraid to be the first, no, nor afraid for them to see it.
Joe went down on his knees for the greater convenience of opening the bundle, and dragged out a large and heavy roll of some dark stuff.
What do you call this? Bed curtains?
And yep, that's right. Yep.
Bed curtains. Don't drop that oil upon the blankets now.
This is Joe.
His blankets.
And that's
I don't know. Something about a perky grave robber just makes me.
This whole scene is like really disturbing. Like,
Yeah, it is.
For real.
Yeah, it is.
Whose else's do you think? He isn't likely to take cold without 'em, I dare say. You may look through that shirt till your eyes ache, but you won't find a hole in it, nor a threadbare place. It's the best he had, and a fine one, too. They'd have wasted it by dressing him up in it if it hadn't been for me.
Scrooge listened to this dialogue in horror. As opposed to a horror, which is a dance, it is in horror.
Spirit! I see. Case of this unhappy man might be my own. My life tends that way now. Merciful heaven, what is this?
The scene had changed, and now he had almost touched a bare, uncurtained bed. A pale light, rising in the outer air, fell straight upon his bed, and on it, unwatched, unwept, uncared for, was the body of this plundered, unknown man.
Spirit, let me see some tenderness connected with a death. This dark chamber, spirit will be forever present to me.
The ghost conducted him to poor Bob Cratchit's house, the dwelling he had visited before, and found the mother and the children seated round the fire. Quiet, very quiet. The noisy little Cratchits were as still as statues in one corner, and sat looking up at Peter, who had a book before him. The mother and her daughters were engaged in needlework, but surely they were very quiet.
And he took a child and set him in the midst of them.
Where had Scrooge heard those words? He had not dreamed them. The boy must have read them out as he and the spirit crossed the threshold. Why did he not go on? The mother laid her work upon the table and put her hand up to her face.
Colour hurts my eyes.
She said, "The colour? Ah, poor Tiny Tim."
They're better now again. It makes them weak by candlelight. And I wouldn't show weak eyes to your father when he comes home for the world. It must be near his time.
Past it, rather.
Peter answered, shutting up his book.
But I think he has walked a little slower than he used these few last evenings, Mother.
I have known him walk with Tiny Tim upon his shoulder, very fast indeed.
And so have I.
Cried Peter.
Often.
And so have I.
Exclaimed another. So had all.
But he was very light to carry, and his father loved him so that it was no trouble. No trouble. And there's your father at the door.
She hurried out to meet him, and little Bob and his comforter, he had had need of it, poor fellow, came in. His tea was ready for him on the hob, and they all tried who should help him to it most. Then the two young Cratchits got upon his knees and laid each child a little cheek against his face, as if they said, "Don't mind it,
Father. Don't be grieved.
Don't be grieved.
And the demon came out from the closet. Don't be grieved.
Also, we just keep adding a voice, like there's another Cratchit every time.
Also, feed me some cake, would you?
Multiplying.
Bob. Bob was very cheerful with them and spoke pleasantly to all the family. He looked at the work upon the table and praised the industry and speed of Mrs. Cratchit and the girls. They would be done long before Sunday, he said.
Sunday? You went today then, Robert?
Yes, my dear,
returned Bob.
I wish you could have gone. It would have done you good to see how green a place it is. But you'll see it often. I promised him that I'd walk there on a Sunday. My little child. My little child.
He broke down all at once. He couldn't help it. If he could have helped it, he and his child would have been farther apart, perhaps, than they were.
Spectre,
said Scrooge.
Something informs me that our parting moment is at hand. I know it, but I know not how. Tell me, what man that was? The covered face, whom we saw lying dead.
The ghost of Christmas yet to come conveyed him to a dismal, wretched churchyard. The spirit stood among the graves and pointed down to one.
Before I draw near to that stone which you point, answer me one question. Are these the shadows of things that will be? Or are they the shadows of things that may be only?
Still the ghost pointed downward to the grave by which it stood.
Men's courses will foreshadow certain ends, to which if persevered in they must lead. If the courses be departed from, the ends will change. Say it thus with what you show me!
The spirit was immovable as ever. Scrooge crept toward it, trembling as he went, and, following the finger, read upon the stone of the neglected grave his own name. Ebenezer Scrooge.
Am I that man who lay upon the bed? No. Spirit. Oh, no, no, Spirit! Hear me. I am not the man I was. I will not be. That man I have must been for this intercourse. Why show me this if I am past all hope? Assure me that I yet may change these shadows you have shown me by an altered life.
For the first time, the kind hand faltered.
I will honor Christmas in my heart and try and keep it all the year. I will live in the past, the present, and the future. The spirits of all three shall strive within me. It will not shut out the lessons they teach. Oh, tell me I may sponge away the writing on this stone.
Holding up his hands in one last prayer to have his fate reversed, he saw an alteration in the phantom's hood and dress. It shrunk, collapsed, and dwindled down into a bedpost. Yes, and the bedpost was his own. The bed was his own. The room was his own. Best and happiest of all, the time before him was his own, to make amends in. He was checked in his transports by the churches ringing out the lustiest peals he had ever heard. Running to the window.
Do-do-do-do. Mississippi Queen. No, sorry. Different pill.
Yes, and everyone was confused as to what the hell that was. Running to the... running to the... Damn it. It's always this first word of the sentence that just knocks me out of the accent. Running to the window, he opened it and put out his head. No fog, no mist, no night. Clear, bright, stirring, golden day.
What's today?
Cried Scrooge, calling downward to a boy in Sunday clothes, who perhaps had loitered in to look about him.
Eh?
What's today, my fine fellow?
Today? Why, Christmas Day.
It's Christmas Day. I haven't missed it. Hello, my fine fellow.
Hello.
Do you know the poulterers? In the street next... in the next street, but one at the corner.
I should hope I did.
An intelligent boy. A remarkable boy. Do you know whether they've sold the prize turkey that was hanging up there? Not the little prize turkey, the big one.
What? The one as big as me?
What a delightful boy. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Yes, my buck.
It's hanging there now.
Is it? Go and buy it.
What, yeah?
No, I'm in earnest.
Exclaimed the
sorry.
boy. Sorry, I have to... Go ahead. Exclaimed the boy.
No. I'm in earnest. No. Buy it. Tell them to bring it here. Then I give them direction where to take it. Come back with the man, and I will give you a shilling. Come back with him in less than 5 minutes. I'll give you half a crown.
The boy was off like a shot.
I'll send it to Bob Cratchit's. He shan't know who sends it. It's twice the size of Tiny Tim. Joe Miller never made such a joke as sending it to Bob's would be.
The hand in which he wrote the address was not a steady one, but write it he did, and somehow. And went downstairs to open the street door, ready for the coming of the poulterer's man. It was a turkey. He never could have stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped him short off in a minute, like sticks of sealing wax. Scrooge dressed himself, all in his best, and at last got out onto the streets. The people were by this time pouring forth, as he had seen them with the ghost of Christmas present, and walking with his hands behind him, Scrooge regarded everyone with a delighted smile. He looked so irresistibly pleasant, in a word, that 3 or 4 good-humored fellows said, "Good morning, sir, Merry Christmas to you." And Scrooge said often afterwards that, of all the blithe sounds he had ever heard, these were the blithest in his ear. In the afternoon, he turned his steps towards his nephew's house. He passed the door a dozen times before he had the courage to go up and knock. But he made a dash and did it.
Is your master at home, my dear?
Said Scrooge to the girl. Nice girl.
Nice.
Very.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Where is he, my love?
He's in the dining room, sir, with his mistress.
He knows me.
Said Scrooge, with his hand already on the dining room lock.
I'll go in here, my dear.
And that's still you, Scrooge.
Oh. Fred!
Why, bless my soul!
Cried Fred.
Who's that?
It's I, your Uncle Scrooge. I have come to dinner. Will you let me in, Fred?
And that's actually, despite the quote, that's actually...
Is that narrator?
Yeah, it's
Okay.
narrator, yeah.
Let him in. It's a mercy he didn't shake his arm off. He was at home in 5 minutes. Nothing could be heartier. His niece looked just the same. So did Topper when he came. So did the plump sister when she came. So did everyone when they came. Wonderful party, wonderful games, wonderful unanimity, wonderful happiness. But he was early at the office the next morning. Oh, he was early there. If he could only be there first and catch Bob Cratchit coming late, that was the thing he had set his heart upon. And he did it. The clock struck 9. No Bob. 15:15. No Bob. Bob was full 18 minutes and a half behind his time.
Oh boy.
Scrooge sat with his door wide open, that he might see him come into the tank. Bob's hat was off before he opened the door, his comforter too. He was on his stool in a jiffy, driving away with his pen, as if he were trying to overtake 9 o'clock.
Hello?
Growled Scrooge in his accustomed voice, as near as he could feign it.
Then what do you mean by coming here at this time of day?
Cratchit.
Oh, I'm very sorry, sir. I'm behind my time.
You are? Yes, I think you are. Step this way, if you please.
Sorry.
It's only once a year, sir. It shall not be repeated. I was making a rather merry yesterday, sir.
Now tell you what, my friend. I'm not going to stand this sort of thing any longer, and therefore...
Scrooge continued, leaping from his stool and giving Bob such a dig in the waistcoat that he staggered back into the tank again.
And therefore, I'm about to raise your salary.
Bob trembled and got a little nearer to the ruler.
A Merry Christmas, Bob!
Said Scrooge, with an earnestness that could not be mistaken, as he clapped him on the back.
A merrier Christmas, Bob, my good fellow, than I have given you for many a year. I'll raise your salary and endeavor to assist your struggling family, and we will discuss your affairs this very afternoon over a Christmas bowl of smoking bishop, Bob. Make up the fires and buy a second coal scuttle before you dot another I, Bob Cratchit.
Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, and as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but his own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits, but lived in that respect upon the total abstinence principle ever afterwards. And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well, if any man alive possessed the knowledge. May that be truly said of us, and all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, everyone, God bless us.
Everyone. Woohoo!
We did it.
Yay!
Well done.
Original
well done.
hand-colored illustrations by
By
John.
John Leach, 1870 1864. Way to go.
This production of A Christmas Carol has been brought to you by the BBC.
Great stuff, everybody, as always. It's funny, you know, everyone has, and we've had ones where like, if the reading went way off the rails more than it did this year.
Oh, yeah.
But,
my God.
you know, there have been
Some
times
of
where
them
just
have been
way off the
incredibly
rails.
off the
But by the
rails.
time you get to the Ghost of Christmas Yet to Come, everyone is just kind of like, oh, like it gets real serious because, and it really starts with that scene with everybody just auctioning off Scrooge's clothes, basically. Like the idea that they just like literally rip down the curtains around his bed and they're like, all right, like, cause he's not going to need him anymore. Like, and the thing about it too, remember, this was like deadly serious for Dickens because he went through it. Like he knew more than his share of Scrooges, you know, that he had to live with. So anyway, I love it. I love it. And wonderful performance as always by all of them. Smooth working with all the narrators and all the stuff. It was amazing. And thank you for the raid. Kids are asleep while you were doing your thing. I apologize. Other than to say hello, because I want to make sure we were closing in on the end. So
don't worry, I'll really smooth out my performance for next year. Don't worry, I'll have it really nailed down.
It was
for next year's show.
It was all good stuff. I will start with Rob on the bottom of the column. Great stuff as always, Rob. Thank you for all of the combinations of narration and a memorable Marley as always, and all that kind of good stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. How'd you feel about things, and where will we see you next here in the internets and places beyond?
Well, I just dripped water all over myself, so Merry Christmas to all and to all. I'm getting soaked. Anyway, how did I feel about that? You know what? It's so much fun. I was thinking during one of my breaks from reading, have I done every single one of these? I think I have.
You might have.
I don't think I've missed a single one.
I think you might have, yeah.
And we've done every version of this that exists. And I'm pretty sure I've played every part at least once.
Mm-hmm.
I've done Marley a couple of times now, but I actually felt this was my best Marley that I've done of the times that I've done it.
Yeah, it was great.
Thank you. It's that. I mean, that part's great. That's like, if you can't play Scrooge, I actually think Marley's the best character in the piece.
Mankind was my business. Yeah.
Oh God, I love that line. And there's so many good productions of this, so many good movies of this. But I love was it F. Scott Fitzgerald? Is that the not F. Scott Fitzgerald? Who's the really famous production of this? The famous movie of this?
There's George C. Scott. There's
George C. Scott. That's the one I was thinking of.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Marley in that is particularly good.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen that, also the Muppets one is surprisingly
the fact
fun,
that it's the judges, that it's Waldorf and Stellar, is the freaking best. Like, you know.
It's really it's a piece of work.
Oh man, it's so good.
It's great. I'm
Incidentally,
gonna go watch it
as people have always said, A Muppet Christmas Carol, arguably of all the productions, is as close, and I'm not joking, as close as to Dickens' actual work as you're going to get. And part of that is because Michael Caine plays Scrooge as serious as a heart attack. Like and he said that he's like, I was like, I wasn't going to make it a children's show. He's like, and he still to this day says that that was maybe one of his top 3 or 4 roles ever, was getting to do that. So anyway, sorry.
Yeah, they found liner notes in the book that said that Charles Dickens actually suggested must be performed with Muppets.
Please do with puppets. Yeah, exactly.
Really,
with Muppets involved.
Really fascinating when they found. Anyway,
yeah.
I'm gonna wrap this up. This was super fun. I needed this more than I even realized I needed this, and this is such a great thing to do with old and new friends alike, and with a rotating cast of characters every time. I hope I get to do it for many more years to come, and it's just fun. It's just a fun piece, and it's every time I'm reading it, I'm like, don't trip over your own tongue when you're trying to figure out what these words are, because some of them, even though you've read it a million times, there's going to be that one word you come up that's going to be like a 4-part road bump.
Yep.
And it's just every time.
Oh man, that list
but yeah.
of dinner ingredients. I was like,
It's like, and this and this and this.
So I know I'm already running over my allotted time for the outro, but I just will say the time we read the full version of this and we went through that scene, I nearly ran out of air.
Yeah.
I think the room I was in, it was like if they had checked for the O2 meter, it would have been on empty in there.
I do have to say, by the way, that story is now, this story was written 1843, right? 180 years ago. For a 180-year-old story, this reads pretty goddamn well. I mean, I totally agree with you. I agree with you entirely, but I sometimes think about that and I'm like, you know what? Like, I had the misfortune of having to read some other things in the 1840s, and let me tell you, they did not hold up, but sorry.
Anyway, once again, I'm Darkside Rob. If you know me, you know where to find me. Twitch.tv/DarksideRob. That's RAHB. I'm playing a lot of variety games right now. If you want to drop me a follow, I'm currently in the middle of Path of Exile 2, Stalker 2, and Indiana Jones 2. No, sorry, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. And I'm doing December of Souls, where I'm playing a whole bunch of different Souls games, but mostly trying to get through Elden Ring and get to the DLC. So yeah, if you want to see some of that crazy stuff, come drop me a follow, and I'll also be doing some voice acting work and some music production work on there. So you can find me there. I'm Darkside Rob on Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, or actually, that's not true. It's all different on all those platforms. So just go find me at linktr.ee/DarksideRob, RAHB, and you'll find all my socials there. And yeah, happy holidays, everybody. Happy holidays, everybody. I did this with tonight. It was so awesome. Happy holidays. To you, Arv, and to your whole family, and to everybody in the chat. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Merry Christmas to all, and to all, I'm exhausted. Who's next?
Okay. Thanks, Rob. Good luck with everything. Also, thoughts with your mom on the surgery, and please keep us posted. But
thank you, my friend. Yeah. I absolutely will.
But thank you as always. Indy, Scrooge.
And I'm going to go watch
Tremendous.
Scrooged. I'm going to go watch Scrooged now.
So much
the best.
Great work, Indy, as Scrooge. It was a lot of fun to watch. I hope it was fun to actually play it. The transformation in Scrooge, one of my favorite sections is always the part where he comes out. He's like, "Oh, what a wonderful boy, a remarkable boy," because like he's just like, "I saw my own death, and I'm not dead yet," and like there's a lot of joy associated with that.
I have a chance.
I have a chance. So that was really good stuff, and I hope you enjoyed doing it as much as it seemed like you were having fun doing it. How'd you feel about today? Having fun with that, and so on. And where will the lovely folks see you on the internets and beyond?
Honestly, just a privilege and a joy to be able to do this. So thank you, as always, for just hosting this, doing the whole thing. Thank you to every single one of you guys, above and below. You guys are all incredible. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this. I wanted to do this since last year, so getting to finally do it, and I hope that I did it some form of justice, and that you guys enjoyed. And you can find me at the usual spots.
Bravissimo. Excellent work.
Oh, thank you. Also, I followed you already, by the way. And yeah, you can find me here. I'm Indy, INDY, and yeah, thank you again.
Thanks, Indy. Great stuff today. Rem, great stuff as well in a varied list of roles. And I liked the idea that we had Mrs. Cratchit, which was compared with, well, Bob, that type of thing is compared to a much more refined narrator voice. And, of course, the Ghost of Christmas Past in this sort of airy, light, vaguely troubling, because of how pure the voice sounds, all that stuff. So good work tonight, as always. And I hope as well that you got a bit of, it sounds weird, but a bit of restfulness in getting away from other concerns and worries, at least for a little while.
It was really nice. It was nice to focus on reading along and relaxing. And my brain is starting to shut down now. But I haven't gotten to practice dialects in a while, so I don't get to do this stuff that much anymore. So it was fun to bring it back out and dust it off a little bit. So. No, I'm happy to be here. Put me a little more in the holiday spirit than I've been, because all I do is work all day, every day.
Yeah.
And then I go to bed, and then I get up and work some more. I love what I do, I swear.
Still, it's nice to get a break from it,
It
on occasion.
And it was good company. So.
Well, thank you, Rem, and happy holidays to you as well. And make sure you follow all the things with Rem with Catalyst and elsewhere. But most of all, Rem, get some rest if you can. And thank you as always. Zach, my friend, great stuff from you as always. I loved both the narrator voice and then I've had this experience with Trent as well, where you're like doing the deep narrator voice. And then he realized, and then it's like Fezziwig. It's like, well, boys, he has to like drop even lower, like increase bass, basso profundo. So I was enjoying that quite a bit. And you've had a chance to see, again, various iterations of Scrooge, of Cratchit, of all this stuff. So it's always fun to watch it with someone else along with you, and Rob has done all of these as well, to see these different permutations and so on. So so good work on all of that as always. And yeah, any parting thoughts about all that, and where will the lovely folks find you here and beyond in the internets?
It's always a great story to narrate and voice characters for with the cast. Always a good challenge to kind of see how you can voice something differently from year to year. And a great story overall as well, and a good reminder of the past, the present, and the future. So I always look forward to it. It's always such a pleasure. It's a great time to see our alums as well, which is good. And the people will find me as part of Gen GMs, our podcast, vodcast thing that we have going here, talking about GMing. Also, as part of our Vocalist next year, Expedition from the Mysterious Peaks,
which is back rolling.
Well,
Yep.
Which is back rolling with some new cast. And then you'll find me on my own channel. Hopefully, I'll be streaming soon. I have the parts to assemble and build my own PC finally, because believe it or not, I have used Macintosh computers my entire life and never had a Windows computer. So that'll be a first.
Zach, if you need any assistance with that, I don't know if you're in my Discord, but I have a bunch of PC people who would be happy to help.
Perfect.
I'll send you an invite over there if you want.
Oh yeah. And then you'll find me in other places, in Q1 of 2025, places you may have heard of, but that I cannot speak about yet. But lots of cool and amazing things coming up, and happy to be here, happy to voice stuff with you, and see you all soon.
Good stuff. Thank you, Zach. Good work again, as always. And last but certainly not least, Russ, again, excellent work as well. And we did, in fact, manage to get, if the joke aside about your children, they did remove themselves
They were
from,
totally, yeah.
they totally did. And so we got a chance to get not just Cratchit, but also excellent narration work in there too, for the full, segment. And it was one of the longer segments too, as far as the narration. So, and like listing off about 35 roughly things, that they all had at this Christmas meal. So, but it was great stuff. And I
definitely think we've done this where Russ has had maybe like 3 lines.
Yeah, I know. That was really, exactly. I was really glad that Russ got a full out, part this time around, in this way.
I've certainly never done the narrator before. So
yeah. So how did you feel about it?
Section.
How did you feel about doing stuff before, and where can the people find you on the internets, etc.?
Yeah, that section in particular, it was challenging, and then it also reminded me of like a Monty Python sketch, which absolutely must have been influenced by Dickens, as they like list off 100 things. So a lot of fun, really great to meet the new Arvocalists, Indy and Rem, and good to work with Zach and Rob, the old boys. And Arv, thank you for having me back. I definitely missed being part of this, because it now conflicts with the West Coast dinner hour and the many children who won't remove themselves. In terms of where you guys can find me, let's see. I'm currently doing an Azure Sky D&D campaign with a bunch of comedians, some of whom are still learning to play.
Which is fun to watch. I've seen it a few times. It's good stuff.
On a channel called DM Tozy Presents. So if you're on Twitch, follow that. Most of my stuff is on Instagram, which is just Russ Guberman, pretty easy to find. I'm doing a series. I'm an improv teacher at the longest running improv theater in LA called the LA Connection. So I'm doing like a series on improv tips, how to handle yourself on stage, and also tours of like little indie theaters of the past and the stories of those theaters before they evaporated. So go there. And if you're in the Southland for any reason, I'm doing a production of Midsummer Night's Dream probably in March, where I'll be playing Nick Bottom. So that should be a lot of fun. Nice. You can watch me with a donkey head on. And yeah, it's been a pleasure, guys.
Thank you very much, Russ. And again, to everybody, it's very special to me because this is, as we've talked about, my favorite short story. I think it's an extremely important message that maintains itself, as I said, regardless of religious persuasion or any religion at all. The overall message of making what you can of the time that you have and the best that you can of the time you have is really important. And to do it with a group of people that are as talented as this and good friends as this is always a pleasure. We, as the Arvocalists, will return next month with more of Growing Up, I think, as we're closing in on the end of that game. But this was a great pleasure. So Chat, and thank you to Chat, by the way, wonderful stuff out of Chat today too. But Chat, if we can get some love for the amazing Arvocalists, past and present, if you will, Arvocalists of Christmas past and present and future. Thank you to Russ, thank you to Zach, to Rem, to Indy, and to Rob. Great work, everybody, and I will see you soon / in the new year.
Merry Christmas to all, and to all good night.
Merry Christmas to all good
Merry
night. Happy
Christmas.
holidays. All righty, and we hit 1,000 backers. Hey, that's what I'm talking about. Well, what a great pleasure. What a true honor to be able to do this. And it really is meaningful, I think, not just to me. I'd like to think it's meaningful to the community. I've had a lot of people who are like, oh yeah, this is happening this year. And they're sort of used to being able to come back to it. It can kind of, reminds them of a certain time of year. And I do think it's important. The marker of after a very difficult year, what has been a difficult year for a lot of people, one of the most significant things we can do, I think, is maintain a sense of hope. And hope is not nonsensical Pollyanna-ish belief. It is a acknowledgement that we do not know the future. And because we don't know the future, we have an obligation to do what we can in the present and let the future take care of itself. And if we can do that, we will make our world a better world, and make our futures better futures for ourselves, for our children, for our friends, family, for people that we don't know, for our fellow human beings, and for the planet. And so it's one of the reasons that I love this story as much as I do. And it was great to see the Arvocalists once again bring it like they always do. That is going to do it for me for today. We will be back on Wednesday evening with the amazing Waterdeep Dragon Heist Shadow Crew, Community Dungeons and Dragons again. That'll be happening. And then Thursday, for those of you who missed it, I won Dark Sun Shattered Lands today. So on Thursday, we are going to be starting a new game called Beyond Shadowgate, which is the sequel to Shadowgate, and it is a lot of fun. The music is awesome, and I cannot wait to give this a try because I love the original Shadowgate, and I actually interviewed people who were doing kind of a spiritual sequel to Shadowgate as well. So definitely stop by Thursday for more of that. And then on Saturday night, we will have more of Eberron, Oracle of War, which is going to be a great time as well. Now, one little surprise for all of you, because I promised everyone a surprise. And this surprise is that I am going to show all of you lovely people. I'm going to show all of you. I'm going to show you pictures from another prominent Christmas Carol production. So I am happy to say that I have before me, hang on a second. Let me just pull this up. Yes, I have before me pictures of my daughter and my son who are going to be performing in their version of, or their school's version of, A Christmas Carol. And so I'm going to show you I have a few production photos that you can see, because my daughter, little Arv, is going to be playing Scrooge, and my son is going to be playing Tiny Tim. And so let's take a look at a few of these, shall we? That is Scrooge on the left. And that is Marley, of course, on the right. Then we have Scrooge, again, my daughter Scrooge on the right, and that is the Ghost of Christmas Present upon the left, as you can see. Probably my favorite, because I love her expression in this, Scrooge's expression. That's the Ghost of Christmas Past, who's looking up at Scrooge, and then Scrooge themselves there on the right. And my son as Tiny Tim, I cannot get over how great this outfit is. Like, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, how good is that? How good is that look? Like, oh my God. He is absolutely loves doing this. I cannot even tell you. I just was like, that is a badass outfit for this. Oh my goodness. Needs a crutch. No, I know. He didn't have the crutch with him. And that's them as they're rehearsing on stage. And that I thought was really sweet. That was not part of the show. Those are my two children hugging each other at the end of the rehearsal today. Because they're great kids. Isn't that great? Yeah. So that is the season. Those are the good times of the season, is that stuff. Yeah, Indy has met them both. He has met them in person. He has met them in person. So has Zach met them in person. But yeah, almost makes my cold dead heart warm. Nothing will do that any better, let me tell you, than when kids are kind of bringing it as they did there. Yeah, I'm telling you, I cannot wait. My favorite story with two of my three favorite people, my third being my wife, two of my three favorite people in the world on stage. That's not bad. That's not bad. Could be a lot worse. So I'm very excited to see that. So that is going to be happening tomorrow night. But as I say, we will be back Wednesday night. While I'm watching that, you'll have Community D&D going along. And then Thursday, Beyond Shadowgate. And then, as I say, Saturday night for more Eberron, Oracle of War. And next week, remember, next Tuesday, we have the holiday show. My family will be playing a game for all of you during the day. And then we will have after that, and that's going to be I don't know if that's the Patreon Field Chet Cho's Game of the Month. I don't think that's the Patreon Field Game of the Month next week. I think that's the Game of the Month. I need to remember. I think I do my family stream, and then I do the game of the Patreon Field Chet Cho's Game of the Month, which is Caves of Cood. I think. I have to look at it, but anyway. And then in the afternoon will be more Songs of Conquest over on GOG.com's Twitch channel. That will be Christmas Eve. Then we'll have, hopefully, a Merry Christmas, everyone. And the week after, then, more stuff going on next week I won't get into. But 2 weeks from now will be January 31st. That will be that'll be December 31st, which is New Year's Eve. And that will be the Game of the Year show. And that's where we will rank all the games. We will talk about the 2024 that was, the 2025 that is to come, and so on. So that is the plan for the next couple of weeks. So that is going to do it for me for today. I do think we're going to do a raid today because we have some people that are here. So let me just double check quickly and make sure what we've got. Hang on just a second. Let me see who's got it. Okay. Yes. All right. I know who we are going to raid. I know why. I know for whom the bell tolls. Okay, yes. Right. So the raid are very simple. If you are not a sub, you are going to do this, which is the Arvanauts Have Landed, followed by Twitch raid. If you are a sub, you're going to do this, which is the Arvanauts Have Landed, Arvany Hype, Arvany Roar, Arvany Switch, Arvany Love, Arvany Blown, Arvany Who, Whoa, Arvany Crit Hit, Arvany Hype, all the Arvanys, when you are brought over automatically to the person that we are going to raid. I've already gone over this a million times, so I'm just going to say you already know what to do. Follow all the things. Please go to the YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube. Thank you if you were on the YouTube channel, !ArvTube, !ArvCode the Discord, Twitter, !Arv Tweets, Blue Sky, !Sky, website, arvanl1.com, !Arv shop for the merchandise area, !Arv Treon for the Patreon. Thank you so much as well to Hillness, because I believe, thanks to Hillness and his generous gift today, we have now reached the channel goal. I believe that is the case, that we have reached the channel goal of... let's see. We have reached the channel goal. Why can I not find... Why can't I find the thing? I think we have 100. I think we had 150 subs, but I can't find it. We got more. Okay, I don't remember what it was. I'm going to have to look at it again, but I think we hit the goal. So thank you for those of you who subbed to the channel, and thank you so much to Hillness. Hillness pushed across the finish line. Yeah, so thank you to Hillness. Thank you, of course, to TomTom, who did this incredible 100 sub boost recently, which was incredibly generous. I mean, I can't even tell you. But the generosity of everybody just in being here as well, in addition to those wonderful gifts, really means a lot. So thank you all for doing that. Again, Icarus, Library, Gray Shade, for all that good stuff in terms of my writing. And of course, !BLM, Black Lives Matter, important to affirm and assert the significance and importance of Black lives. !Help Now, the World Health Organization page on suicide prevention, important to reach out to others when you need help, reach out to others when they need help as well. And Ukraine, UKRAINE, to help the people of Ukraine as they fight back against an illegal and illegitimate war with bravery and courage, and send the message we will do so for others in the future. Thank you to my wonderful mods. Thank you to Drew the Damager, to Prince Justin, to Shadow Mage, to Triffity Mats for being awesome. Thank you so much for being the best mods in the business. Thank you to my wonderful Patreon supporters and subscribers: Drew, Prince Justin, Shadow Mage, Triffity Mats, Darkside Rob, Butthurt Gamer, Crit Twitch, Dr. Laser Falcon, Indy, Master of Rem, Mrs. Dunsel, TomTom. Thank you so much to all of you, and thank you to my wonderful viewers. Thank you to Darth Sisu, to Dragon Spear, who was lurking, to Jagtress, to Light and Passion, to Live Suing, to Mr. Jonas, to the Kids Are Asleep, and thanks again, Kids Are Asleep, for that raid towards the end. I appreciate that too. And thank you to Tribe of Gum. Special thanks today to the amazing Arvocalists. Thank you so much to Russ, our alumnus. Thank you so much to our regulars, Zach and Rem and Indy. And thank you so much to our other alumnus, Darkside Rob, for being here. It was great, and I really enjoyed this time with all of you. Everyone have a lovely rest of your Tuesday. Please stick around for the raid. Have a lovely rest of your Tuesday and enjoy Wednesday. Make sure you're back here for Wednesday Community D&D and Thursday for Beyond Shadowgate. And for one more time, and in the spirit of Tiny Tim, God bless us, everyone. Thanks, everyone. Much love, and be good to each other. Have a good night. Honk.